It was a stormy Tuesday night in Millfield, the kind of night when secrets were washed away by the rain. Captain Frank Reed stood beside a battered Honda Civic, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to illuminate the determined face of Olivia Turner. The 34-year-old public defender, known for her unwavering commitment to justice, stared back at him, her heart racing. How did a woman with a pristine record end up with 3 kilos of cocaine in her trunk during a routine traffic stop? Reed's practiced smirk faded, confusion morphing into anger as he reached for his holster. The rain poured down, drenching them both, but Olivia stood firm. She had been recording Reed for 6 months, documenting the patterns of corruption that plagued the Millfield Police Department, a department notorious for its excessive force and racial profiling. Olivia was the daughter of Thomas Turner, a detective who had been accused of corruption and died under suspicious circumstances. The weight of her father's legacy pressed heavily on her shoulders, and she was determined to clear his name. The setup as Olivia's mind raced. She recalled the countless times she defended the marginalized in Millfield, a town where the racial divide ran deep. Reed, a respected figure in the community, had a reputation for cleaning up the streets, but behind closed doors, he orchestrated a web of deceit. "Step out of the vehicle, please," Reed commanded, his smile not reaching his eyes. Olivia's heart pounded as she complied, knowing that this was no ordinary traffic stop. The rain intensified, masking her fear as she stood beside her car. Drenched and vulnerable, Reed's gaze shifted to her trunk, where Officer Daniels was already inspecting the contents. Olivia's instincts screamed that something was amiss. She had to act fast. "Miss Turner, I detected the odor of marijuana coming from your vehicle." Reed lied, his voice dripping with false authority. Olivia's mind raced. There was no marijuana in her car. She had to expose the setup. "This is illegal," she shouted, her voice rising above the rain. "You can't plant evidence." But Reed's expression hardened, and he signaled to Daniels, who was now rummaging through her trunk. "Captain, you might want to take a look at this," Daniels called out, his voice laced with feigned concern. Olivia's heart sank as she realized they were about to frame her. The arrest? "Olivia Turner, you're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance," Daniels announced, cuffing her wrists with a roughness that sent pain shooting through her arms. Panic surged within her as she struggled against the cold metal. "This is a framed job," she protested, but Reed leaned in closer, his voice a menacing whisper. "Your father couldn't prove anything either. Look how that ended for him." As they shoved her into the back of the patrol car, Olivia's mind raced. She had been gathering evidence against Reed for months, and now it was all slipping away. The rain continued to pour, washing away her hopes. The jailhouse revelation in the county jail. Olivia stood motionless, her heart heavy with despair. The news of her arrest spread like wildfire, and the press painted her as a corrupt public defender. But she knew the truth was buried beneath layers of deceit. "You're not the first," a fellow inmate whispered. "They did the same to my brother." Olivia's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let Reed win. She shared a cell with Tasha Williams, another victim of Reed's corruption. They began to piece together the pattern of injustice. All the framed individuals had one thing in common. They had crossed Reed. Olivia's mind raced as she formulated a plan. She had backups of her evidence, and she would find a way to expose Reed's operation. Tasha's insights about the warehouse where Reed conducted his illicit dealings fueled Olivia's determination. "We need to gather testimonies from the others," Olivia insisted. They had to establish a pattern of corruption that would bring Reed down. The unexpected ally during a visitation, Olivia met Officer James Foster, a recent transfer from Chicago PD. He had been observing irregularities within the department and was willing to help. "Your father was a good man," he said, his voice low. "I want to see justice served." With Foster's assistance, Olivia began to connect the dots. They discovered that Reed's operation extended beyond planting evidence. He was involved in a drug distribution network that exploited the very system he was sworn to protect. The race against Amia as Olivia's trial approached, the pressure mounted. Reed was moving fast, and Olivia knew she had to act quickly. She instructed Maya, her sister, to check their father's fishing spot for any hidden evidence. Maya unearthed a USB drive containing crucial information about Clearwater Holdings, the shell corporation behind Reed's operation. The pieces were falling into place, but time was running out on the day of Olivia's trial. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Judge Howard Grant presided over proceedings, his connections to Reed evident. Olivia's heart raced as she faced a man who had the power to determine her fate. But she had a secret weapon, her father's watch, containing a micro SD card with recordings of Reed's corrupt dealings. As the trial unfolded, Olivia's resolve strengthened. She would not let Reed destroy her father's legacy. The unraveling as the evidence began to surface. The tide turned. Foster's intel about Reed's shipment and the gas station footage revealing the planning of evidence became pivotal. The courtroom erupted in chaos as the truth emerged that Reed's facade crumbled and federal agents moved in to arrest him. Olivia stood tall, her heart pounding with triumph. Justice was finally within reach without a new beginning. Months later, Olivia stood at the podium of the newly renovated Millfield Community Center, announcing the launch of the Thomas Turner Justice Initiative. The room was filled with supporters, and the air buzzed with hope. "Today, we stand united against systemic injustice," Olivia declared, her voice steady. No one should face the machinery of law enforcement alone. As she looked out at the crowd, she saw Tasha, now an outreach coordinator, and Foster, the interim captain, working together to reform the department. The fight for justice was far from over, but Olivia knew they were on the right path. With her father's legacy restored and a new chapter beginning, Olivia Turner was ready to continue the journey toward justice, one step at a time. The shadows remained, but as Olivia settled into her new role, she couldn't shake the feeling that shadows still lingered. Reed's arrest was just a beginning, and the corruption that had festered in Millfield for years would not vanish overnight. Determined to root out the remaining elements of the corrupt system, Olivia began to gather a team of dedicated individuals, lawyers, activists, and community leaders, who shared her vision for a just society. They met regularly, strategizing ways to expose the remaining officers involved in Reed's operation and to support those who had been wrongfully accused. As they delved deeper into the investigation, they uncovered a network of officers who had been complicit in Reed's schemes, each with their own motives for maintaining the status quo. Olivia knew that bringing them to justice would require not only courage, but also meticulous planning. The final confrontation. One evening, as Olivia reviewed case files in her office, she received an anonymous tip about meetings scheduled between several officers at a local bar known for its secrecy. The tipster claimed they were discussing how to cover their tracks after Reed's downfall. With her team in tow, Olivia devised a plan to gather evidence. They set up surveillance, capturing the officers' conversations and documenting their attempts to manipulate the narrative surrounding Reed's arrest. As the pieces fell into place, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was more than just about her father's legacy. It was about creating a safer, more just community for everyone in Millfield. The community rises with the evidence in hand. Olivia and her team approached the media, ensuring that the story of the corrupt officers would not be buried. The community rallied behind her, demanding accountability and transparency from their police department. As the pressure mounted, the remaining officers began to crack. Some resigned, while others faced internal investigations. Olivia's relentless pursuit of justice inspired a movement within Millfield, igniting conversations about police reform and community safety. A legacy of change months later, as Olivia stood before a crowd at a community forum, she reflected on how far they had come. The Thomas Turner Justice Initiative had grown, providing legal support to those wrongfully accused and advocating for systemic change within the police department. Justice is not just a destination, it's a journey, Olivia proclaimed, her voice filled with conviction. Together, we can create a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. As the crowd erupted in applause, Olivia felt a sense of hope wash over her. The shadows of the past were beginning to fade, replaced by a brighter future for Millfield, a future built on justice, accountability, and community. And as she looked out at the faces of those who had stood by her side, Olivia knew that the fight for justice would continue, not just for her father, but for every person who had ever been wronged by a system that had failed them. The journey was far from over, but together, they would ensure that the light of justice would always shine through the darkness.